thing which I've got, but I know a little bit more about Kiran. I think Kiran runs the technology practice now for Microsoft in India and responsible for all their 4 pillars. So he's going to share a lot about Microsoft's vision with us today. Kiran, BB, for all of you ladies and gentlemen, give him a big hand. The next panel member is Ravi Krishnamurthy. Ravi is currently serving as head of global delivery applications at Sony. Prior to Sony, Ravi held critical management positions at TCS and iGate, and I think also knowing Ravi very well, he is driving a lot of innovation at Sony in India and driving innovation for Sony globally. Please give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen, Ravi Krishnamurthy. Last but not the least is Phil Fersht, who is the CEO of HFS Research and is an acclaimed author, analyst, and visionary in IT services and BPO. The digital transformation of enterprise operations and cognitive automation strategies. Fersht coined the terms the as-a-service economy and digital one office, which describe HFS Research's vision for the future of global operations and the impact of cognitive automation and disruptive digital business models. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for Phil Fersht. A brief introduction from me before we start the discussion with the panel members, setting the context of why this topic and what we want to achieve with this topic today. The topic has created interest, at least with us, based on 2 or 3 things which have been happening. One has been this whole story of digital transformation, which has now been talked about for 4 or 5 years. Then the World Economic Forum has talked about the 4th industrial revolution, which is, I think, the theme for this event here, talking about the combining of the digital, physical, and material worlds to create the new industrial economy. And in between, over the last, let's say, 10 years, there are companies which are called born digital companies, which have created immense value for themselves and almost created $1 trillion market capitalizations. So we looked at what has created these companies to be so successful digitally, and is there a learning for the non-digital companies which we believe are still struggling with implementing digital strategies and digital business models in their organizations. So out of that, we did some study and we came up with this theme. There are 2 or 3 themes here. One is called what is called a platform-based business model, which talks about what is a platform-based business. It defines as something which is open, connected, infinitely scalable, and uses intelligence to drive their business. And then we said that, is this kind of a model applicable to the non-digital companies? And that's how we came up with this theme, saying if you want to do digital businesses, then is creating platforms a good way to start building digital businesses in your organization? So hopefully, during the course of the session, we will achieve 3 or 4 objectives. One is to see whether this makes sense. 2 is listen to the experiences of my distinguished panel to see what they are seeing, what they are experiencing, and then what do they see as the future if you want to implement platform-based digital businesses in your organizations. So that's what we hope. There would be some good takeaways at the end of the session in terms of the challenges of implementing innovation, how do you create innovation in organizations, interfaces between businesses and technology, and change management initiatives. So having given the background to the session and what we want to achieve in today's session, the session is really broken up into 3 parts. One is the first part, which is the introduction of the panel and the session. We will have about 40 minutes of conversation with the panel members, where we will deal with 3 questions, really. One is establishing the framework of concept of digital platform-based businesses. Second is their own experiences in their organizations, and third is the future. And the last 10 minutes is left for questions and answers from the audience here. So without much ado, we'll get the session started. So I will start first with Hari and ask him about if platform is the holistic approach, Hari, and platforms are the way, let's say, to create digital businesses. And Unilever has been at the forefront of implementing digital technologies for a long time and very successfully too. So how do you see this concept, and how do you see its applicability in general to consumer industries and your own experiences?
Thanks, Shikhar. It's really great to meet up on a really interesting topic on platforms. It's something we read a lot about, we talk a lot about, and sometimes it's also important to kind of demystify the jargon behind it, right? Because both the word digital and platform is probably the most talked about word around, right? And sometimes it's kind of good to look at it from a slightly historical and time-based perspective, right? Because while the theme today is very much about digital platforms, right? Platform as a concept, and probably we never used to talk of it as platforms then, has been in vogue in the industry for much longer. And particularly in the consumer goods industries, if you look at it more deeply, the whole concept of brands has been a platform, right? Because if you look at it, there was a time when it was all commoditized stuff which was available to consumers. And brands brought in the whole concept of a trusted product, which is globally consistent. It stands for what it means for. And that became a platform on which consumers really embraced a product. The other thing which comes up, and when we discuss a lot about it within Unilever, and I'm sure that would be true for most other consumer goods and retail companies, is about distribution as a platform, right? So if you take our products, we try to reach millions of outlets in the remotest parts of the country, and same is true in every part of the world. That happens through a distribution platform which really gives us access to stores. And what you see in the digital world is the same thing, but obviously in a much shrunk time horizon where time and space and everything has changed. And obviously the multipliers and the accelerators you get on a digital platform are order of magnitude more significant. I think there are some interesting parallels, and later we'll also talk about some examples of how companies in consumer goods have been able to take some of the concepts of traditional platforms and then move them on to the more digital concepts.
Thank you, Hari. So interesting take, saying platform is not new, but platform as digital is new, and there are some views on that. So I'll move on to now Kiran. Kiran, you and Microsoft are at the forefront of creating the new platforms of the future. So how do you see this whole concept of building digital businesses using platforms, and does Microsoft endorse it, and where does it go from there?
Well, the last one first. Of course we endorse it. But just going back, about a year back, my CTO started using digital platform. In 10 minutes, he used that phrase some 6 times. I said, hang on, stop. And what do you mean by this? Then he explained a whole lot of things, and I didn't understand. And then after about 15 minutes, I got it. It's to simplify it so that I can understand and make it really simple. It's just an ecosystem where businesses will transact with businesses, or businesses will transact with consumers. And that is not new. What just happened with the cloud is the whole new wave of customers whom you could address, which you never could do in the past, or even with the speed and agility that we could get today, is the change that is there. I agree with you completely that it's not new, but the speed at which we can do that and transact and build very, very secure platforms is very strong. To give you an example, we use that every day. Whatever Flipkart is doing and Amazon is doing is just an e-com platform, for example. Whatever Swiggy is doing or Book My Show is doing is actually an end-use platform for that. So if you think about what internet as the core fundamental platform which is providing, and the cloud which is providing that, and then how businesses are using that particular platform to create sub-platforms or using that technology to create multiple experiences for all the users and for businesses is the change that we are seeing. From that perspective, Azure is the biggest platform that we have. And if you look at that, if you look at what we did in the last 3 to 4 years with Azure of creating a huge public cloud offering, and that amplifying whatever people want to do in their digital transformation is providing space for them, providing the infrastructure, providing the tech for it. All of us know about the Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin actually is able to have that level of amplification mainly because of blockchain, which is the tech behind it. That's still a platform tech. That's how platforms are evolving and speed at which we are evolving. And like I told Shrikar earlier, is that we are touching, our ability to touch consumers, which we never could do in the past, is much more amplified today. And that's how customers or companies are using digital platforms for speed, agility, and to unearth new markets to address. And therefore, it's really, really here and now.
Thank you, Kiran. I will come back to you, Phil, after I hear from Ravi. Ravi, Sony, I think, two businesses, consumer electronics and media and technology. I think one has, I guess, more advanced in terms of platform usage than the other. So very interesting experiences you would be having. So what's your take on this whole platform-based digital businesses? Is this the way for enterprises to build digital businesses, and how are you seeing that?
Absolutely, I fully agree with what Kiran and Hari talked about earlier. Platforms are definitely the way to go forward. And again, technology has enabled platform creation and utilization of platforms like ever before. Again, maybe talking from an industry point of view, Sony, as all of you know, is divided into two broad groups of companies. One is the consumer electronics business. The second is the media and entertainment business, like the pictures, music, and games. We do see a different, two different trends in the industry. Again, media and entertainment has been disrupted so heavily in the past. Usage of technology is paramount for media and entertainment industry. We have seen gone are the days where we used to buy CDs and DVDs for watching movies and listening to audio. Now it's all on the click of a button, right? So that's a big change on the media and entertainment industry. And that has enabled our usage of technology for driving platforms. So gone from physical distribution to digital distribution of our platform. So that is one big change that we have seen. The other big change on the media and entertainment industry is earlier Sony used to create our own content. We used to make our own production houses. We used to have our own studios. But not only producing content, but we also acquire content today. So more than a content creator, we've also transformed ourselves into a content curator. Spotting the right talent across the world and then making it distributed to the global audience. So that's one of the big role change of the Sony business. And not just for Sony, I think across the industry has gone into a similar transformation. So that's on the media and entertainment industry. But if I look at the consumer electronics, maybe we are still in a catch-up mode. There's still a lot of things that needs to be done. Maybe there's a lot of platformization happening already, but still there's a lot of new things to be done. Again, there's still the role of a physical stores that is very much essential. There are digital stores where you can buy stuff online and stuff, but the role of physical stores is becoming more and more important. And I think the convergence of the physical and the digital world will make a lot of difference in the platformization going forward. So that's my take right now in terms of, but I fully agree with what Kiran and Hari said about it is now one, and it is here right now.
Thank you, Ravi. Phil, last but not the least, I think you have this vantage position of speaking after all the three have spoken. You normally have the vantage position of observing from the outside in to see what organizations worldwide are doing, and you look at various organizations. So how do you see this whole platform-based businesses, creating digital businesses based on platforms?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is dependent on the industry. So digital as a business model has truly impacted consumer-led industries like retail, consumer products, for example, supply chain-led industries. And I think that's where we've seen most uptake, is where if you don't build a digital platform, you don't get into the digital ecosystem, you're not in the game, right? where I think adoption has been slower is in industries which are still trying to figure out what digital means to them, and it means different things to different industries. And you know, when I look at things like utilities and energy, they're dealing with a lot of compliance issues, a lot of regulatory issues, and maybe for them they're looking more at automation and other strategies like that to be successful. But you know, looking at things in general, I think the big issue now is the technology is here. It's how can the business lines really keep up with everything? And this is a consistent conversation I've been having with many clients and suppliers, which is how can IT people drive more traction with the business lines, and how can business lines get more traction with IT? Because you can't really drive an initiative until the business lines have bought in. And I think this is going to be the biggest challenge moving forward, which is starting to break down these barriers, you know, more than they've ever been in the past.
Thank you, Phil. So is there anything, Hari, Kiran,
Just want to add
you'd
to
like
what
to add,
Phil
or
mentioned.
to anything which anybody else
And
has
to
said?
all the, I mean, like, I get to meet so many customers and their experimentation in the models that they have to do to digitize or truly evolve a digital model for their business in the hybrid world they're in. What Phil mentioned and what Hari mentioned is also super important. We should be starting to think about that to be small, iterative startup projects, not expect 100% outcome at the first beginning, but ability to do that rapidly and do it in an environment where you know that the failure rate will be high, but be able to align to business as quickly as possible, because businesses themselves don't know what will be the model that will click. And that's very important, Phil. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I was saying earlier, I was at an AI summit for Fortune 50 companies a few weeks ago, and I think we spent 1 hour talking about the tech and 2 days talking about change management around the tech.
Yes. Anything else? No, great. So I think you wanted to add something? Yeah. So no, great to get at least semblance of agreement saying platforms to create digital businesses is a good way to create digital businesses. So normally it's very difficult to get 5 people to agree on something, but we've got the first one out of the way, so it's fantastic. So now having established or agreed, obviously this is coming from a lot of experience all of you have had over the last few years and not just making statements. My next question, really, I'll start with you, Ravi, is in terms of what has been your experience? Can you give some examples of, you know, creating these kind of platforms in Sony, and how has it helped business? What are the challenges you faced in implementing these kind of models, you know, and anything else which would be useful to a lot of the colleagues around in the room today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had a fairly good amount of success, but at the same time, the success has not been an easy one. We've had a lot of challenges in establishing platforms and also leveraging some of the new digital technology. Like Phil said, I think the change management has been a very critical aspect of how we have ventured into introducing innovation and introducing new technology to our business. You know, when we take an idea to a business, again, we look at it from 2 ways. One is from a customer viewpoint, and then one from a technology viewpoint, or from a business viewpoint and technology viewpoint. So from a business viewpoint, maybe the business teams you know about what probably they want, or they do not know exactly how it can be achieved, but there's little bit of an appetite for technology, but they are not fully aware of what technology can do. Whereas on the technology side, we've always struggled in terms of, we know the technology, we know what the power of technology, but converting it into a solid use case for the business has been a challenge. So we've taken some small steps of introducing new technology, whether it is AI or blockchain or AR and VR and so on. So, but maybe we've had little amount of success earlier on, and now we've been able to establish a good relationship between the business and the IT teams, and now we've been able to move forward with a lot more joint proof of concepts along with the business teams, and then able to convert those into real tangible business outcomes. So I think that has been the maybe our journey so far, and I'm sure we will continue in that same journey, and there's a lot of sponsorship and there's a lot of recognition of this kind of an approach from across the organization. So that's basically what I would like to share today. Yeah.
That's helpful, Ravi. Phil, I think move on to you in terms of, as I said, you would have observed a lot of companies. So in the non-born digital world, have you seen some truly great examples of companies who have implemented platform-based businesses? And do you have any example, or can you share something with us, or something as close to perfection as possible, if there is one like that?
I mean, do we want to talk about disruptive or?
Disruptive, but I'm not talking about Amazon, Uber, Airbnb, but people who are getting disrupted by them, but who have actually adapted themselves faster than others.
There's a fantastic story of a company called Zuma, which makes pizzas, delivers pizzas in the United States. It's in California right now. This company has completely taken over the pizza delivery market because it literally it makes all the pizzas by robots. So it puts the sauce on, rolls the dough, puts on the toppings, loads them into the truck, and they can cook 200 pizzas at a time in the truck.
Wow.
So people are sitting at home, ordering a pizza, turns up piping hot.
Interesting.
And I don't think they care that it was made by a robot, right? What they do is the talent they have spend their time thinking about how can we deliver customized pizzas during the finale of Game of Thrones or the Super Bowl or whatever. So things like that are happening in certain industries which are just taking advantage of automation technology, but also machine learning, analytics, everything to deliver a product which is up to customer standards, but much more efficient and much more cost effective, and can be done at scale.
No, fantastic, Phil. Great example. I actually was at the MIT labs last year, and I saw pizzas being printed on 3D printers. So I thought maybe these guys are going to do that, but maybe they'll get there someday.
Yeah, and I think the next stage is if they can deliver it to your front door with a drone.
Correct.
And then you don't have to leave a tip either.
Correct.
Right?
But very interesting take, of how they're using technology to create absolutely brand new business models. So I'll come to Hari in terms of, what are the good examples we see from the Unilever world, Hari, of creating digital platforms, and similar question to Ravi in terms of challenges and other things. Yeah, sure.
I think within Unilever and also kind of more widely within consumer goods, right? One framework to look at platforms is really, what could you do within the enterprise? What could you do linking with existing global digital platforms? And what could you do to really, either yourself or more likely in partnership, help to create a platform? So almost kind of three horizons of thinking. I think the first one is very important, right? While it is kind of internal, but then within a large global enterprise, I think the opportunity for creating a platform and using that to digitize the core is quite significant. Because sometimes when we talk about digitization and platforms, we only look at it in terms of consumer apps, right? But when you talk of real organizational value, a lot of it is locked up within the enterprise. And I think the whole theme on a core digital platform is a really big one. And when we look at a global enterprise which has its history of legacy systems, multiple operations, and so on, but equally you want to make it as seamless as the new digital world, I think there is a huge business as well as tech opportunity out there. I think from the tech side, it is about reimagining our own architecture, recognizing that there's investment in building blocks already made, and it's not that everything needs to be ripped apart, right? In the new world, in the new architecture around APIs, etc., it kind of lends itself to using the existing blocks as almost building blocks of the platform, and then create a truly scalable global platform. And I think we have some good experiences, both within Unilever and I'm sure in the wider consumer goods world on what is possible. I think the second horizon of it is about how do we link an enterprise with upcoming digital platforms. And this is really important because if you really see the clock speed within traditional businesses, right, they operate with a certain cadence. The world outside seems to operate at a slightly different cadence, right? And what is important is how do we make these two worlds operate frictionlessly, right? As a consumer, it's very easy for us to download an Uber app and get on with it. If you were to do that same thing within an enterprise, right, where you are linked in with a number of internal systems and procedures, right, and you want to link that with a global external platform around maybe procurement or an e-marketplace or talent management, right, it poses interesting challenges, but frankly, a great opportunity, right, because I think there is a creative way by which we could make sure that, these two can operate seamlessly, right? And how do we make sure that, while you're still, within the enterprise, you're able to link very seamlessly and take advantage of the external platforms. I think a number of areas where we have some very good experiences, particularly around, talent management, learning, procurement, e-marketplaces. I think there's a huge opportunity on how do we link up these two worlds. And then, of course, there is the third horizon of how can a company which has been operating in more traditional areas in the past, either by themselves or more likely in partnership, help create a digital platform. I think here again there are good examples, because then you bring in a lot of your own historical assets, but equally with the partnerships that you have, and also with the tech which is kind of much more easily available today. How do you create a truly digital platform on which you are an important player, but equally there will be others as well.
Right. Thank you, Hari. Come to Kiran. I think over the last few years, Microsoft has been at the forefront of creating this end-to-end digital platform. So, Kiran, there must be some interesting examples of how some of your clients have leveraged the platforms you have created to create a platform-based business or digital platforms. I think people would like to know. And
yeah, sure. Let me give you an example, a couple of examples from how people are leveraging Azure as a platform and how they're creating digital models in formerly known as brick and mortar companies. Not the e-com companies. It's easy to give that example. We're working with banks to actually think about using blockchain for cash management in ATMs. It's an aggregated big pain to solve that particular problem. It's just asset management and ensuring that blockchain is a technology which is cross-leveraging all banks and bringing it all together as a thing. Blockchain at the net of everything else is just a ledger of records, nothing else. And then ability to do that for cash management or even asset management is very huge, and we are working with a few banks on that. And the second one we're thinking is working with a totally new concept called VoLT, which is voice over LTE. That one is creating an opportunity of unprecedented capability with digital. In the erstwhile, we used to have voice only on 2G and 3G. With VoLT, we actually think of a 100% digital model for a complete contact center framework on the cloud. And that is going to change the way people will be investing in contact center framework, because the minute you go digital, it comes with a ton of advantages related to analytics and machine learning and everything else, which is core inside, and it's anchored around that. And the third one, which is really, really interesting, and I'll have to come back to that, why it is so interesting, is how we are actually thinking of ML and AI using Azure as completely revolutionizing customer support using a digital bot. There is a company that is experimenting to completely revamp their entire customer experience by using a digital bot. And that is, that's a manufacturing company for that matter, with just consumer durables. All these wouldn't have been possible half a decade back. All these are impossible to achieve because none of these 4 or 5 technologies I mentioned, which is going to leverage that, it was available. And it weren't available, and that speed and agility which cloud is providing and that platform is providing is seamless. And switching to our productivity, which is O365. That by itself, if you look at it, I was talking to one of the panelists, I was talking to Ravi about it. If you use Teams as a core platform, the way it surfaces and provides you an experience, a user experience, and putting all the tech behind of Skype or SharePoint or anything else is a core platform. And when you start implementing it, its adoption is much faster, the ability to collaborate is much faster, and thinking about making it much more real for customers in their digital transformation as related to empowering their employees is much faster. So some of these are really exciting. But I do spend more than 50% of the time educating customers and demystifying these terms because they use it easily, but to change the process, to Phil's point, to understand the change management, to experiment the right way to get it, and also to see which is the sliver of success which they need to anchor on and which is the experiment they should stop experimenting is a very, very, very difficult journey, and that's really exciting.
Very interesting. Anybody would like to add to anything which anybody has said on this?
Yeah, one more thing that I would like to add. Again, platform adoption is not a simple activity, right? It's a huge exercise, especially for companies like us who are actually not born digitals. So there are two approaches of how do we build or adopt platforms. So one is you can build it yourself by, we have built monolithic applications with so much of complex business logic built into it, and probably building in a platform is going to be simpler or somewhat similar, but obviously much more complex. The other approach is also buying platforms or using some of the existing platforms. And again, we have examples of both even within a Sony context. We've built our own platforms for global marketing, e-market space, and so on. So that's something that we've built in-house. And we also have examples of where we've used commercially available platform solutions, like our theatrical distribution, which is an example of how the content gets distributed across the theaters across the globe. So again, two different examples. And again, let's not get misconception. Let's not live with this misconception that we need to build platform by ourselves. I think that we need to have a hybrid approach of how do we adopt platforms going forward.
Can
Thank
I just
you.
add
Sorry,
one
go ahead,
thing
go ahead,
to Ravi? I should work with Ravi quickly, but we are working with another media company using how actually our ability to use a digital platform to help eradicate piracy over a longer period of time. Think about blockchain. And when you think of blockchain as a ledger of records, and it is then given to media usage or downloading media or anything like that, our ability to provide the most curated content to the user in a very targeted zone and also be able to measure and monetize the right way to use it rather than to allow it to be pirated is far more better than what it was ever in the past. And our ability to say that if, for example, Netflix is saying that it's not going to allow you to use that particular thing for downloading more than 2 times or 3 devices, it exactly knows what it's doing. And how to make that happen, it's much more seamless today. And I thought I should share that because we talked about it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, talking about piracy, we have an interesting example. I think we all know that we get fake Monte Carlo pen, Mont Blanc pens and so on, right? And Carter watches and all that. But can you believe you can get 4K LED TV fake ones in the market today? So I think that's the extent of what blockchain can help us to prevent piracy and duplication and counterfeit products.
Very, very interesting. I think, yeah, some of the points, I think, especially what Hari said about how do you create platform-based businesses, which is really what we're talking about. That you create your platform, there are external platforms and there are interfaces. So either you are a part of an ecosystem or you create the ecosystem. Amazon creates the ecosystem. A lot of people participate in the ecosystem. So a lot of us cannot be Amazons, but I think we all need to understand that, how do you even understand that you can actually be a beneficiary by participating in the ecosystem rather than being out of the ecosystem. So I come to the last segment of this formal conversation. So platforms is the way to go. Some interesting experiences. So it's really, if now enterprises want to really drive this forward in a more systematic, sustained, long-term fashion, saying, how do we create this, platforms which are really, global and, all-encompassing, connected, open, and networked, and intelligent, etc., etc. So, I mean, fine for me to plug something on Sonata. So we at Sonata have come up with a framework called platformation and architecture, which are two ways of creating digital businesses, but more of it later kind of stuff. But how should enterprises, go through this journey, right? It's a long, big journey. A lot of enterprises are having, fairly disconnected systems, a lot of legacy, but you want to create this nice, beautiful, connected platform at some point in time, 3, 5, 10 years from now. So are there frameworks, are there models, methods which enterprises can adopt, follow from your own experiences? And also, what are the ways they can put this innovation, change of thinking within organizations so that people can then actually believe in these platform-based business models and implement them as they go forward? And also, do you see certain technologies will have a big impact? Like I saw Kiran talking about blockchain twice or thrice. I've also heard about a lot of people saying blockchain is going to be the next disruptor. There'll be no Uber, there'll be no Amazon, there'll be no Airbnb because they'll all go away because, blockchain takes care of everything, the middleman goes away kind of stuff. So, so where do you see all this? So I'll start with Kiran on this segment, and then we'll go on to the others.
So this is for real, okay, and we are seeing that. There are few things will happen. I'll tell you what I'm seeing now, and I'll go a little Star Trek on this one. What I'm seeing now is very soon we will find people creating digital platforms for doing the same thing. So it'll then therefore cause two problems. One is standardization, and second one is interoperability. Because we will have to have, when all these platforms are giving the same example and the same experience, then people will be clamoring up for the same share, or even in an expanded marketplace. Interoperability is really exotic, but it's almost impossible to achieve because nobody wants to expose APIs. And everything is very, very central to their core strategy about how they want to create that a differentiated value proposition in their digital model. Let me give you an example on what's happening today. AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud are 3 public clouds, big platforms. They don't talk to each other. Therefore, they'll have a broker platform which will start getting created, which I now am calling the broker platform. And this is for real. If you look at what Cisco is doing, or HP is doing, or even BMC is trying to achieve, they are calling it Cloud Lifecycle Management Solution, which is actually a broker platform to talk to 3 public clouds. So that is for here. And that's how it will be. And APIs will undergo, we will evolve a culture and an environment where APIs will become very important. Today, it's real. If you go for a credit rating agency, they don't really care about the data. But they're exposing credit rating, they're exposing that information. Anybody who wants that in the digital model will be able to grasp that and then be able to use it into their platform. And that's very important. So interoperability will start happening when general to use information will start being part of that API structure. The second one, when you look at it, will be how Ola Play. We're working with them. It's a public news that we're working with Ola Play. How Ola Play is actually a digital platform. It's a ride-share company, but Ola Play is going to be evolving as a huge digital platform. They won't use the data for anything. All they have to do is expose API. Then Swiggy and Book My Show or anybody else will start, hotels will start using that information, saying that a person, this is their usage pattern, this is the journey that they do, and therefore, if that person is booking a ride for a 2-hour journey or something like that based on Google Maps, it will then surface information saying, do you want to buy a snack? Because it's going to be a long journey. So I can surface that information. Our ability to tap into these APIs, which technically the platform is not exposing, but the platform is able to provide, the data is not being used with the platform is just exposing for an alternate platform to latch onto it and then create that environment. So it's going to be a really exciting journey and unbound and limitless opportunities, because when you start thinking about how you can use digital platforms to enable your digital transformation and how you can create customers and engage with customers whom you never could engage in the past, it's going to be a really exciting world. And a little bit of the future on that.
Great. Good to hear the futuristic story. It sounds like Isaac Asimov, but...
And it is Star Trek, like I told you. One was here and one was Star Trek.
Right. So Hari, how do you see it? How do you move from these ugly looking, islands of technologies to this beautiful digital platform world? How far, how long, what are the frameworks and challenges, innovation, etc.?
Sure. But maybe just picking one point from what Kiran just mentioned. I think this thing about limitless opportunities, right? I think somewhere, if you kind of ponder a bit about this, right? This whole concept of, a product versus a platform, right? When you go about making a product, whether it is a consumer product or a software product or anything, I mean, you start with a set of functionalities that it has to deliver. And then if it delivers those functionalities, then the product is a go, right? But frankly, when you are looking at a platform, the whole thing is about limitless, right? What Kiran talked about, right? Because when you create a platform, you wouldn't have been able to imagine what are the hundreds of things it will do eventually, right? And a lot of it is not serendipity, right? It is a carefully thought through platform concept, which eventually manifests itself based on larger business and consumer opportunity into hundreds of different things which it can unfold. So if you take the same concept on to how a business can really embrace platform strategy, the way we see it is, there are two legs to it, right? There are historical assets that any consumer goods or retail or any company would have, right? And these would be about deep consumer understanding, distribution channels, brands, and so on, right? That's an important leg to on which obviously the strategy will continue to be. And frankly, it also gives the organization an opportunity to kind of re-interrogate some of these historical strengths to see what can you do more of. The second important leg is really the new, within quotes, the digital leg, right? And this is about, the world of, data, analytics, AI, and all the tech associated with it, right? And if you have these two legs and kind of marry that together, right, I think it can be a hugely powerful combination for any company. And frankly, at the apex of that, and we heard a lot of that in the morning session, is also about this whole thing around culture, around innovation and creativity. So if you have these two strengths, right, your historical strengths, as well as the new things coming in from the new digital platform, and on top of that, the culture of innovation, frankly, it can be a hugely powerful proposition for any company. And I think that's what, if you see, companies across sectors are really leveraging. And I think that can be a great strategy going forward.
Thank you, Hari. I'll come to Ravi. So Ravi, how do you see this journey from point A to point B in terms of a purely exquisite platform world from point A to point B and all the other questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said earlier, right, building a platform is never going to be easy. It's not going to be easy one. But transitioning from product, like what he said about moving from a product to a platform is going to be a huge challenge. But I think that's certainly the direction that all of us are venturing into. Again, I earlier talked about the role of the physical stores. The role of physical stores has traditionally been more in terms of a channel for selling and marketing stuff. But now the role is changing into more of an experience center. So the customer centricity has to be one of the core elements of any digital strategy. From that perspective, the customer centricity and of course adding value to the business is going to be very important. So the platforms, again, from a technology point of view, I look at AI, data as a platform, blockchain and some of these new technologies are going to be very pivotal in terms of building a digital strategy and how do we leverage the new technology into making better customer-centric organization and providing higher value to the business.
Very, very good, Ravi. So I'll give you the last word, Phil, on this in terms of how do you see this, what are the challenges which enterprises will face, any frameworks, any technologies which have a lasting impact on creating this platform world?
Yeah, I think you have to follow the nature of business to understand how these platforms are going to evolve. So I'll use the example of the banking sector, particularly in North America and to some extent the UK. A lot of branches are closing down, and what it's doing is it's increasing the stress loads on the call centers and the service centers to service, I'm sure many folks here are familiar with it, to service clients. So suddenly your call center reps need to understand higher level conversations. You need to develop systems that are more effective in capturing information. You have to understand how the needs of the consumers are changing to a more touchless environment. They don't necessarily want to talk to staff all the time anymore. They want to do their transactions online. So you can start to think about almost a perfect template on how to run a digital bank. So, you know, we're starting to see emerging banks just focusing on millennials who want to use their iPhones, iPads, etc. We're starting to see, you know, digital insurance emerging where, you know, there's a template. So what does the insurance company do? It has a platform, it has all the technologies it needs, so it has to focus on its differentiator, which could either be great customer service, or in the case of insurance, it's having the best risk analysts, right? That sort of thing. So I just think we're going to start to see many businesses figure out what is core versus what can be platformized. And, you know, it was fascinating to watch like rival mobile phone manufacturers now sharing the same handset manufacturers, distribution channels. They're saying, well, who cares who makes the handsets? We'll compete in terms of price plans and good marketing and that sort of thing. So, you know, the changing business is just going to change behaviors, and the platform in terms of making these businesses so much more efficient is at the core.
No, excellent. I mean, I think a lot of interesting points, especially I think all of you have made about that very different from product, because platform-based businesses means you really don't know what the business is going to look like tomorrow. So all you're trying to do is prepare yourself for flexible business models which are open and connected, because I mean, if 3D printing becomes big, then manufacturing plants will shut down. But does your platform support a new way of doing business kind of stuff? So very interesting takes on that. It's a different world in terms of it's not functionality, but openness, connectivity, and then leave the imagination to the future so that your platform today stays relevant as long as possible kind of stuff. So any other points which anybody would like to make before we hand over the mic to Ranjana or to the audience on the topics we spoke about today?
This is a plug to you and the way Sonata is thinking about it. And I had the opportunity, and I never had seen somebody thinking about going to meet customers and talking about how they can take their existing business processes and cluster them into customer service or supply chain or internal finance and things like that. Each of them to be a cluster of apps which is coming together and some sort of loosely coupled platform. That's going to be very interesting, because each of them will then sit in an interoperable manner within the organization and create the agility and the speed, mainly because of the pace at which they have to react to a customer. And I like that approach, which I heard from you and things like that. But it's not easy to achieve it. And none of that is even ambiguous. It's still visionary from that standpoint. But if we are able to do that, to break down the internal processes in the process of digitization as a first step, and then apply tech to it, we will be able to achieve far greater success and speeder. It'll be a little more speeder than normal. That's what I want to mention.
Anybody else like to add? Hurry. Phil. So Ranjana, over to you. We have 10 minutes, I guess, for questions. I hope we have some. Maybe you can introduce yourself and, you know, and tell if you're addressing the question to any of us, or leave that to you. Yeah.
Thanks. So hi, I'm Siva here. I represent IBM. So my question is for Phil, the first one, and one for Kiran. So to Phil, the question is, most of the examples that we heard here are B2C related, right, when we talked about platform. What is your view on B2B platforms? I'm talking this more from a BPM industry perspective, right? If we talk about finance and accounting services, or HR services, or payroll services, if we are talking about platforms, are we not trying to straitjacket things for our customers, which will create more issues than helping us to build a business? So that's the question for you, Phil. And maybe I can finish my question for Kiran also, and I will let you answer, Phil. So Kiran, my question to you is, you were talking about interoperability, right, of these various platforms, and you gave an example of Ola Play, which you are currently working on. So how do you see this as an infringement into the privacy of the people who are using it, right? So for example, I may not like somebody else using the data on from where to where I'm going and why I'm going, right? So this is a question for you, Kiran.
Thanks for asking. I forgot about mentioning that.
Phil, you want?
Okay, so impact of platforms in more traditional B2B spaces. I think we've seen a big shift in like finance and accounting as a service, and particularly just in the last 2 or 3 years. I think that whole industry built more on arbitrage, labor arbitrage, than technology. Now we're starting to see that whole arbitrage slow down, and it's starting to move into a intelligence format. I do think, though, that there's a real issue with companies letting providers in behind their Citrix firewalls in particular. There's a big technology privacy issue with F&A, which I think is still going to move very slowly. There's never been a quick bang as a service app which has driven it. On the flip side, HR, Workday transformed that industry. You can't talk to an HR person today not mention Workday and watch their eyes light up with excitement, because an app came along, a platform which was kind of good enough to deliver what HR needed, despite what we all may think of the brilliance of that product. It did the job for many, many people, and then the whole ecosystem built around the Workday environment. Service providers started developing capabilities to deliver HR as a service based on that. We're starting to see that also in the Salesforce environment as well. So I think on the B2B side, it's a little bit more tied to successful SaaS at this point than anything truly loosely coupled. I think it's much more exciting at the front office, where customers want to engage with their businesses in a much more touchless digital environment. Digital is really about how do you take all the cool mobile social technology in your personal life and bring it into the enterprise. And I think that's where the B2B space is suffering from. It hasn't had the advantage of a lot of the technology at the customer end to really change things. So I think it's been a slower moving space. The space that excites me the most, I think, is supply chain and the whole evolution we're seeing in there, and logistics and manufacturing. I mean, that's phenomenal when you start to look at connected factories, the ability to have global inventory supplies and demand and that sort of thing. So I think that's where we're going to see real competitive differentiation come into play. It's much more in the supply chain, logistics, manufacturing area.
Let me handle that data privacy. Really important question. It scares me that Ola actually recommends cars to my house at 6:30 when even I want to go somewhere else. It's already doing it. But there will be two things which will happen, and this is not going to be too far out in the future. Two things will happen. One is a challenge, and another is a huge opportunity for both the digital platforms. One most important thing is the privacy challenge, where GDPR or HIPAA, for example, is creating for PII and for medical records. There will be a regulation as related to privacy when it comes to digital platforms, and it's just not too far out. It's just a matter of time when somebody going to do that. That regulation will come in. The opportunity for the digital platforms is huge. Just think of a situation that if Flipkart tells me that I'm going to use your data, I'm going to give you 10% discount for the next 3 months if you allow me to use your data. I would love it. Swiggy will say next 10 places, I'm going to reduce your time if I'm going to allow this to happen. Ola says you can play music or you can watch a video, movie which is actually paid if I allow your data to be shared. Now, what data are you sharing? And that's very important. And ability for us to choose what data we share about ourselves, how much of the information we share, that's a choice we need to get. That's what the regulator plays. But for the platform and for the user, it's a huge business opportunity. And for me, as a consumer, I would love it if I get loyalty programs, or I get discounts, or I get deals, because my data is being used as an API to somebody else. So that is what I mean by saying limitless opportunity in doing that. Did I answer that question? Right, thanks.
How many? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, please introduce yourself and direct your question. Okay, yeah.
So my name is Amit. I am the founder of a startup working in aviation, helping airlines improve on-time performance. Wow. And the question is probably for the panel is how shall a startup go about building a platform, and what are the key ingredients or design principles you would recommend?
Okay, let me try to attempt that from a technology perspective.
As long as you don't recommend Microsoft, we're all good.
I will surely meet him and exchange my card. No, Shrikar, I won't do it. I'm expecting somebody from your team to do that too. One most important thing when you're thinking of digitizing your operations it should be to know whether you want to change the way you want to engage with your customers differently, or you want to digitize your process for better agility and speed, or actually create a new service which you never would have done in the past. If you think about anchoring your digital journey in one of these three pillars, then the technology will be a plug to that journey. And if you're thinking of engaging customers differently, then you'll need to see whether there is a need for them because of a changing environment on the way they buy your service, or if you have to use another platform, for example, to ride on something so that you're going to surface a new set of customers that you never had in the past. That is how you do it. I'll give you an example. A learning management system from a large SI actually used HoloLens to work with JAL, Japanese Airlines, and with Rolls-Royce to actually digitize the entire technology, entire learning experience of their people. Now, they didn't think about it overnight, but there was an SI, there was a partner of Microsoft using a digital platform and changing the way they can actually do maintenance and do learning experience for your aviation industry. I'm giving examples from your industry. But that's how you can think about it. And tomorrow you're serving customers to be on time. You can't send your engineers throughout the world if world is the market. But you can use digital technology to say, I am going to create an augmented reality world where I only have a 50% or a 30% presence physically. I have a 70% backend where my expertise is sitting, and I have a digital model in doing business. Did I answer you?
I'll quickly add to that. There's a book called Platform Revolution by a person called Sangeet Pal Chaudhary. Read that. So it talks about how to build platform-based businesses. Really talk about a platform. They talks about saying that there are many participants in a platform. So the platform is supposed to create value for the participants. It's supposed to identify value to be created for the various participants. Only once you establish that can you build then a platform, because for a platform to be successful, you need users. And there'll be more users when they see more value. Anyway, this is a very high-level answer, but it's a very deep answer. But I just thought that a very high-level answer that question for you.
Take one last question.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
I think it works.
Hi. So my question is to Kiran. You talked about building these platforms and the challenges of going in front of the customers and talking about the impact of these platforms, whether it's blockchain or ML or AI. I want to understand the transformation challenges you had within Microsoft in terms of going from conventional .NET or SQL to new technologies. Did you have to train your people into reskilling, or did you hire a lot of data scientists or engineers? How did you go about it?
Whatever I answer is going to be super suboptimal than what Satya explained in his book. You don't have to read the whole book, first 4 chapters. Number one problem that we faced when we had to do words, when I look back in journey, is how much of unlearning we needed to do to actually learn the new stuff. You cannot change your entire organizational teams and everybody else. You'll need to start thinking about prioritizing and then focusing on a few set of roles to change the culture. We applied a few existing models like growth mindset and thinking of how much we are unlearning, how much we are learning from other things. But the more important thing was how we engage with our customers. The most important thing is we realized that selling the way we used to sell technology in the past is not resonating with customers, and our sales cycles became really large. But when we started working with what he mentioned and what Ravi mentioned is super important, taking small projects, making it successful, delivering ROI, and aligning with business was probably the best way to do it. Our ticket size became small, but our success numbers became higher. And that's how we did it. Earlier it was easy to do a $10 million deal, But now even a 10K deal is actually equally celebrated and the same amount of vodka is drunk.
All right. Oh, thank you all very much. Thank you, Hari, Kiran, Phil, Ravi. I think at least I enjoyed myself. I hope you all did. So, sure, will do.